Welcome to Future-Proof Business, smart strategies, real insights, and tools to lead and scale in a fast-changing world. Let's future-proof your success.
Welcome to the Future-Proof Business Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Walter Dusseldorp. Walter, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation. Look forward to a fun and hopefully value-adding conversation.
Definitely. Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself? A little bit about your background, what it is that you do?
Sure, of course. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Holland. That's where the Dutch mentor came from. I came to the United States in 1988 with a strong will and desire to go into healthcare. I had a big dream of becoming a doctor, but that got derailed a little bit because of my own actions. But I found that passion again early on, and I have been a flight paramedic, for over 30 years until recently when I got injured. That sidelined me a couple of years ago. But in my mid-30s, I felt, as much as I love taking care of people, I felt and I saw a bigger vision of being able to lead people who were taking care of patients. So that led me into going back to school, got my bachelor's, master's, and fellowship, and became a healthcare administrator. So I spent 20 plus years in for-profit, non-for-profit, and government healthcare, building large, high-performance teams from clinicians and non-clinicians, until after COVID, where I took the next step. I said, what is it that I want to do? And that's really, I decided that my role is to work with small teams and individuals who desire to become highly effective leaders. And that's what I've been doing ever since, working in one-to-one small groups and helping people, what they call, cross the valley of despair, especially going from doing, high-performing doers to becoming leaders, and leaders who are struggling to thrive in their positions and building high-performance teams. And it's been a great joy, and look forward to sharing some more along the way.
Thank you for sharing that. So what exactly inspired you to become the Dutch mentor and to launch your leadership movement?
Yeah, most of those really come from deep personal experiences. I was a high-performing paramedic, and I went into wanted to become, have a greater impact. As a medic, as a nurse, as a doctor, we really only touch one patient at a time. In order to have an impact on a larger group of people, you need to become a leader. So I was very lucky that my first mentor, my first super manager at Horton, believed in me enough to make me a supervisor. But now that you're a supervisor, you're not longer doing, you actually have to learn to lead and work through others through delegation. And of course, nobody taught me how to properly do that. Most people go to get their bachelor's or master's degree. You become more worldly, you become wiser. But again, none of these courses really teach you how to become a highly effective leader where you can lead people and delegate with accountability on how to become highly effective. Now, there are a few people who are natural born leaders, but most of the people really need to learn and attain the skills, knowledge, and abilities to become a highly effective leader. So that's how I became a leader. And of course, later on, I decided to build out a program and start writing books. I think a total of 26 books published on Amazon. They're all related to self-development, self-awareness, leadership, situational leadership, and then into problem solving and how to establish an operational rhythm. And through that, those years of forming, really using my own deep experiences with my teams and the pitfalls and the barriers and how to scramble back, how to utilize the right mentors in order to be able to overcome these obstacles. I said, listen, I think there's a way for me to be able to support emerging leaders in a different way. So traditionally speaking, we learn by going to a class or going to a webinar or go to a conference. But the honest truth is that most of the time when you go there, it's a great experience while there. But by Monday morning, you have long forgotten anything that was taught, maybe unless you take immediate action. So I wanted to change the paradigm that if you want to change habits and behaviors, if you want to become a better version of yourself, you have to do it through action. So my program is I work with people on an individual or team basis on a weekly basis. And I teach them very early on to be self-accountable and to use me as an accountability partner as they continue to grow the leadership skills, knowledge, and abilities. And that really has been highly effective. And you can see that people who have gone through the program who still are in the program, they have shown how they can accelerate in their careers and their business opportunities.
Was there any pivotal moment where you realized that traditional leadership wasn't enough, that you had to do something more?
Yeah, I mean, it really is that you can see it when you're right in the thick of it. It's very difficult to see sometimes, but when you take a step back and you look around, you look at your leaders and you say, how in the world did they become leaders? Most of them are barking orders, or they're demeaning, or they just are very directive, or they say things that really goes against my own constitution, my own values. And once you become more aware of that, then you say, listen, there's a better way of doing it. So I had those leaders. And one leader in particular who was like that with everybody around him, he did it to me one time. I said, listen, no, I will not accept you yelling at me. You can give me critical feedback, but that's not a way to lead me or to lead anybody else. Now, I couldn't stop him from how he was leading others, but I certainly took a stance, and I was proud of myself because, we all have this, this self-doubt that sometimes prevents us from making such a bold stance. But I did, and that really helped me in my career going forward, to making sure that you don't need to become who you are led by. And most of the leaders are mimicking what they have learned from the 5 most important mentors around them. So certainly we have a crop of leaders who are phenomenal, who are true leaders, right? They create other leaders. But there are so many people out there that are not very good. And interesting enough, probably the vast majority of people who are in my service today, their bosses really should be with me. But I really enjoy working with the emerging leader, from the team leader, supervisor, manager, director, senior director, even to the AVP level. They are still very open to learning and adjusting habits and behaviors to become more effective in their leadership style, therefore having a greater impact. And if they learn to measure their action steps, they actually can accelerate their careers.
So what are the common myths about becoming a highly effective leader?
Missed the first right. Say that again.
What are the common myths or misconceptions about becoming an effective leader?
That it is that just by showing up to work, I can be a highly effective leader. Just because your team is performing, I'm a highly effective leader. And that is the misconception. And the way that often is discovered is I do a reflective survey with my mentees. I said, I want you to make an what are your strengths, your weaknesses, your blind spots, and write them down, put them in a sealed envelope, or put them in the desk. Now go ask 10, 15, 20 of your peers, subordinates, and people above you on what they think of you. And, the strange thing is that we think that we manage ourselves, right? That whatever I think is the right thing that's the way it is. But in reality, we really need to learn how to lead and manage the perception of us. And the only way that you know how you are perceived is by going out and asking the people or being vulnerable. And many people are very surprised. I thought it was lockstep with my team. Very few people are this close together. Most people are like, a good distance from how they are perceived, how they see themselves. So closing that gap is critical. And that will lead to actually not only being the leader you want to be, but it's really being the leader your team thrives under. And that's really where my logo and my statement comes from. In 15 minutes per day of working on yourself, you too can become the leader you desire to be and the leader your team deserves. But you need to be dedicated to continuous self-improvement, and many people fall short on that part.
So what do you think, the biggest mistakes that leaders make today?
The biggest mistake is by being directive and not taking the time to get people to buy into what it is they need to do. So they are so busy doing themselves, and when things need to change, they go out and tell people, hey, from this point forward, you have to do everything with your non-dominant hand. That because, that's new regulation. This is how it has to be done. And then they go, they back off and they go do their own thing. The problem is that we are human beings. We have established habits and behaviors. So even if a person comes in and says, listen, we have to do it this way, once they leave, we tend to go back the way it always has been done until something goes wrong. And then the boss comes back, hey, I told you guys or girls, months ago, you had to do it the other way around. So that's the biggest mistake. So the key change that leaders need to make is to make sure that people that they lead to buy-in and not control, lead to context and not control, taking more time to explain the why behind something so people can really understand it and speak in the language that they understand, not just assume that everybody understands. You have to go validate that everybody understands. Spending a little more time on that will lower the resistance to change. Once you lower the resistance to change, everything else becomes that much easier.
So why do you believe like leadership like starts from self-awareness?
Because people lack self-awareness, because nobody in school, in high school, college, or master's really talks about you, right? Look deep inwardly and getting a much better understanding what makes you tick, what's your true purpose. So, for example, every single mentee starts with the same way. Tell me about your why. And they look at me, what do you mean? And then they said, well, tell me your why. Tell me, what do you do? Why do you do it? And they will tell me what they do and how they do it, but don't tell me why they do it. And once they understand, understanding why, right? What is the driving factor behind it? Then they start understanding, getting a deeper understanding. But even then, it's more what and how than why. And if you go to an interview and somebody asks you, tell me a little bit about yourself. If you tell them the how and what, you sound like everybody else. There's no differentiation. I'm a good person, coming on time, I work hard, I love my patients, I take really good care of them. I'm good at finance, I open up a business, I'll be there, I'm 100% dedicated, I work the extra time. Everybody's going to say that. How can you become a standout candidate? For example, my hook, when somebody asked me that question, I said, oh, listen, I was 14 years old riding a bicycle in Holland, and I saw a poor old farmer across the road. He got hit by a car. I was the first on scene. I held it in my arms as he was dying. You want to tell me a little bit more about that. As he was dying, I had this moment, it's like, I will never want to feel this hopeless again. I knew right then and there that I wanted to learn how to take care of patients, take care of people. And that has led me on a journey and a path for the rest of my life of finding ways how I can take care of people. Initially, it was about patients. Now it is about leaders taking care of people who take care of people. And that's how I maintain my connection. So that's my 45-second why story. That's the true why, my purpose and passion behind what I do today. Very few people can articulate that very clearly. So that's why you have to start with self-awareness. You have to understand how people perceive you. You have to understand what your personal values are. You have to understand, what is it that drives you. And once you have that, then you can, really put that on steroids and then utilize that passion, your purpose, to motivate and inspire others.
So you talked about moving from like reaction to response. How can leaders develop that habit?
Yeah, and this is truly agnostic to industry, by the way, right? Events are going to happen, right? Stuff happens in life all the time. Our natural reaction is to react to things. And the reacting is our fight or flight, lower brain activity. We get the adrenaline rush and jump into it. Often, whatever it is that we do, we say, or act like, doesn't give us the desired outcome. Once you become more self-aware of your actions during times of crises, you need to learn to take a step back. It's almost like a micro timeout and process the information first, and then remain upper brain. In other words, allowing yourself to process the information to try to come up with multiple solutions, and then out of those potential solutions, pick one through reasoning that makes the most sense for that particular scenario. What happens when people react, they often don't get what they want, and they have to come back again and again to make adjustments. And there's nothing worse than the stock market or Main Street or employees like is instability or uncertainty. So we owe it to the people that we lead to provide stability. And stability comes out of reasoning, which is upper brain, versus reactive, which is coming out of the lower brain.
So you talked about before about the importance of self-awareness, but some people, they feel like they're not good enough, like they have the imposter syndrome, where, they said, oh, I'm just not good enough to be like a really effective, good leader. So how do you help people overcome like this imposter syndrome, where they think that they're faking it and not really a good leader?
Yeah. So interesting. I do a reflective survey. When you look at your eye, often, people will score themselves way lower in that how they are perceived. So that's the evidence that your imposter syndrome is preventing you, or low confidence or codependence, is preventing you from reaching your full potential or being that highly effective leader. So first, you need to validate, right? First, you need to understand, what does that mean, and is that me? So actually, I provide a 4-quadrant model where they can look at all of the different attributes of leaders and see how they can self-identify. Now, interesting enough, in private, most people will pick out imposter syndrome on their own, meaning that they feel that they know just enough to be in the role that they're in, but certainly not comfortable enough to call themselves an expert. So again, this is no different than any other gap. Once you understand there is a gap, then we start closing the gap. So again, the imposter syndrome, it might be because I am not great at everything. Everybody is good at something. All right. So once we identify what is your super strength, you can build on that super strength and all the other things will flow with it. Or sometimes if it is a blind spot, you might need to raise awareness around it so you can cover that. For example, when I get excited speaking in a large crowd, I speak fast. So because my Dutch accent, especially when in public speaking, my words sometimes are tied together and I'm not articulating so people can really understand what I'm saying. That's a lost opportunity. So I always put somebody in the audience that if I go fast, that they rub their head. So I can see in my peripheral vision that I need to slow down. So again, it is learning to raise self-awareness around those things you do very well or things you don't do well and come up with gap closers in order to be able to be very consistent as a leader. So imposter and low confidence and insecurity, once you're aware of it, we can look at gap closers to build that confidence over a period of time. Nothing happens overnight, right? Behavior change takes time. 15 minutes a day for 90 to 120 days, you can become great at just about everything.
Before you talked about the lower brain thinking, but what about the upper brain? Like, how does that help in making, better decisions?
So it starts with listening, right? So if people are really honest and you ask them the question, said, are you a multitasker? They say, yes, I'm a multitasker. Well, the truth is that we can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. So multitasking is not necessarily a great thing to do, right? And the second thing is that when I'm having a conversation with you right now, are you starting to think about an answer? Or are you already starting to think of another activity or another question? And often that is yes, that's no different than multitasking. What happens is that if you are already occupying your upper brain by formulating a response to a question that's not even been asked, you're likely going to miss something. So the first part of upper brain thinking is that we have to become really good intentional listeners, learning to, take everything in, fully absorb it, process the information, come up with multiple choices of what is the right answer to the solution, including saying, listen, I don't know. I'm going to take a time out. Let me come back to you in an hour, a day, or a week, and with an answer. And that is very difficult too, because most people feel the need to give a answer, not the right answer, an answer, which is more reactive, and then actually giving a proper answer. So again, formulating a response and then, articulating that in a clear way that your audience can understand is what is a requirement of upper brain thinking. Now, mind you, this is not something that happens. Every decision cannot be made in hours, right? As a paramedic, if somebody drops dead in front of me, I can react by just going down and do my things, or even there, I have a microsecond to process the information. Is the scene safe? Do I need a barrier from mouth to mouth? Are there any other dangers there? That's upper brain thinking. Me just dropping to my knees and start doing CPR mouth to mouth is lower reactive thinking. And the consequence, I might pick up a disease or I might get hurt in the process. So it is important that even in a microsecond, or if you have time, to process the information and make the right decision. Now, even sometimes you don't make the right decision. That's okay too. We can fail and we should fail from time to time. That only makes us stronger in the long run.
Before you mentioned about how change happens in 15 minutes a day, but what does it actually look like?
So the best example is to pick something that you would like to do. So you feel some level of passion around, but you have a hard time doing. For example, I don't like going to the gym, but I know I have to go to the gym. I have to work and I have to exercise. So I can say to myself, like most people do on December 31st, I'm going to go buy myself a membership to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, and I'm going to be bulking up and be in best condition at 365 days. In reality, what happens, I go 3 times the first week, twice the second week, 1 time the third week, and then I don't go back more than 4 times the remainder of the year. So that is what we normal behavior do on things we don't feel deeply passionate about. So we need to change. So if I want to change that, I need to learn how to put that into a measurable objective. And I use a scorecard. That's what I promote. So on my scorecard, I say, Walter, exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes. So very specific, very measurable, very attainable, realistic, and timely. And then the next thing is that I say, I go to my calendar, and on my calendar, write down Monday, Wednesday, Friday, exercise from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. And then I'm going to force myself to measure the day after. Did I or did I not fulfill my, and then you red, yellow, and green. If it's all reds or yellows, I need to say, why is that? And what countermeasure do I need to put into place in order to be able to be successful? So it doesn't make a difference if you want to be ambidextrous, you want to learn how to paint, play guitar, fly a helicopter. If you do it with purpose every single day for 90 to 120 days, you can become, you can develop a basic understanding and capability around just about anything in the world. But it requires you to have the behavior for sustainability. And that comes from self-accountability and measurement. If you don't have those two components, the likelihood you will follow it through is not very good.
So how do you help your clients go from doing to leading? What are the first steps?
So the first thing, they need to come to the realization of what it is that they do. Go part of that self-awareness. But the next task of that is that I challenge everybody to write down everything that they do in a matter of 2 weeks. And really in a single column and maybe an Excel spreadsheet. Once they have written down just about everything that they do over a span of 2 weeks, there are 2 columns. One column is value adding and the other one is non-value adding. So value adding is somebody who's willing to pay for it, right? There's real value. Non-value adding might be to me, but I have to ask the question, is it regulatory required? Right? In our world, there are many things that that the government wants from me, adds no value to me, but they want it anyhow, and I have to continue to do it. So now the question is, once you have that completed, I ask them, look at it very carefully and say, if it is non-value added and is not regulatory requirement, can I do away with it? So that's the first thing. That's the easiest one. Then if it is value adding or non-value adding, but it's a regulatory requirement, do I have to do it? And as they go through an exercise that most people learn that they are doing a lot of things that they don't need to do. So that's raising the awareness of all the things that they have done by default. And why is that? Because, as a doer going into a leadership role, it is easy for me to continue to do and control quality than teach down, coach and mentor, or trust somebody else to do it as well as I can do it. Because there is no guidance given to these folks. This is a natural behavior. That's part of that valley of despair. So once they become aware of all the things that they are doing that should be delegated down, the next thing is to go work on them, with them on a delegation model. And that takes, time and effort and a much deeper understanding, deeper than what we can discuss in this topic today.
A big part of becoming a leader is like building a team. Do you have a particular framework you use to help coach, your clients, leaders to build an effective, high performance team?
Yes. So first of all, it's not that we want to build a team, right? That's old language. What we want to build is a group of people that becoming high performance as a team. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get people to come together. They bind together. So in the last book that I wrote about operational rhythm, there are 5 components to that. There's one is you have to have the right people in the right roles. We need to have a crystal clear, unified vision. We need to have meaningful metrics. There needs to be a cadence of accountability, and we need to take action. Now, if we dive deeper into those things, those are components, but it always starts with building a team concord. So it's an agreement between team members to be one. So you can evaluate a team and know like a crew on water, right? Are they synchronous? Are they rowing in the same direction, the same speed, the same intensity? And are they understanding their role in the equation? Very few teams have that. But we keep forcing, and on that same crew boat of 12 people, we have people who are not committed, who are over the COVID non-compliant. You have people who are just compliant, they're just rowing. And then you have the people who are the renters or the owners who really are into it and really are dedicated. And no matter what happens, they are performing. Well, in order to have a team that is high performing, all of the people in that crew need to become at that level. And that takes time and, and effort on the part of the leader. It's developing skills, knowledge, and abilities. It's leveraging, hiring the right people, managing people up or out, constantly going back to make sure that we have the right unified vision, make small adjustments. How can we measure our performance in a meaningful way on a daily, weekly basis? How can we be accountable to that? How can we take the right actions that will have the greatest impact on the outcome we desire? And that takes, where skills, time, and effort to be able to establish that.
Can you maybe explain your A3 thinking method?
Sure.
Like, how does it help people get to the root cause of the leadership issues?
Yeah. So that book is also available on Amazon under my name. So A3 thinking, A3 is just the size of a piece of paper, right? Just a simple size. What we want to do is we want people to understand that often what we think the cause is, it is not. Right? We base a lot of our decisions on assumptions. But what we really should be doing is asking ourselves the question why to get to the root cause. Now, there are multiple different tools you can utilize for that. What I've seen is that people tend to back their way into it. In other words, they already come with a solution in mind and they set up a project. That's not A3 thinking. A3 thinking is starting at box number 1, is establishing a sense of urgency and a clear understanding of what it is that we're trying to fix and why, and what is the impact if we don't fix it. And then taking your time to really understand what is the current process. What does that look like, both in numbers and pictures and people? And then it is, of course, we need to understand what is the target? What is the desired outcome? Once we have that, in box number 4, we can go to what we call the gap analysis, the root cause analysis. That you can use the Ishikawa fishbone diagram. We can use the 5 whys. We can use dot plots, all kinds of different, histograms and Pareto charts in order to understand the gap between where we are today to where it is that we want to go. Only once you have established that robust dialogue and everybody's input and understanding and scoring which one is the likely most significant, root cause that has an impact on the outcome, we can then go into the hypothesis and say, if we do this, then I expect that. Taking that into a pilot and actually go out and test it out. Is this solution that we came up with actually worthy? What is the downstream effect? What is the upstream effect? And only if it works and has a desired outcome, do we spread it to other parts of the business itself. Again, our impatience often finds a solution we think it is, and we implement it. We don't look at it, measure it for any period of time, only to have to come back in a week or 2 weeks or a month to fight the same fire over and over again. So that A3 thinking sets the tone to slow it down a little bit and fix things at the root cause to make sure that there is sustainability over time.
How do you help leaders to have strong, technical skills and translate those technical skills into leadership?
Yeah, there's an equation I use. So performance equals the function of technical skill multiplied times the behavioral capacity. Most of the time, people have technical skills. They know how to type. They know how to put a PowerPoint together. They know how to wash their hands. They know how to change the oil. They know how to, get money from the bank. It is our behavior is what holds us back. Yes, it is important to make sure that the folks that work with us have the technical ability to do the job. In other words, people write roles, so they have the skills, knowledge, ability, and the time to do what we ask them to do. So that is something a critically important part of the evaluation. If we find a gap there, we need to close the gap by giving them support over a period of time to become better or become an expert at that. But we should not forget the behavior, because behavior holds people back quicker. If there is no trust, then nothing else can be built upon that. Right? So it is really important that behavior, trust are things that we look at consistently, and we try to work on it, building that team concord, having that cadence of accountability, lead through love with tough love on the side. All these things are cumulative and supportive of each other to get people in the right place.
So what do you think are some the biggest blocks that prevents people from becoming stepping into high leadership roles? Because some people, they feel like they're just not.
I think that's a whole talk. So first and foremost is that people think that they deserve to be in a position they have not put the work in for. So you not only have to build skills, knowledge, and abilities and experiences, but you also have to build a network, and they all take time and effort on your part to be able to build. I'm the first to say this. I thought when I was, let's say 40 years old, I could have been the chief operating officer of a large hospital. I thought I had the skills, knowledge, abilities to do that. And was insulted when I wouldn't get a position like that. But once I got into a position of a role below that, and I did that for 3 or 4 years, I said, oh my God, I still had a lot to learn. It's a lack of self-awareness. So that is probably the single largest barrier. So you need to understand that experience and time are your friends. So you need to go out and get the experience. So even in your own role, and I use an individual development plan for that, even in your current role, if you desire to go up, try to get exposure to that new role while you're in the current role. And you should work with your boss or other people in the organization to gain those experiences. And it is through those building processes, you can put yourself in a position for success. Again, networking is critically important. So you have to go out and belong to associations and go to meetings and meet people and be on LinkedIn and be on social media and post and comment. You need to add value, right? Because if you're not adding value as a leader on the lower level, how are you going to add value on the higher level? So that's your responsibility. A critical piece that people are ignoring is the development part. You should not go at it alone. Too many people just keep struggling, and men are worse than this than women. Is that, and my clientele list is 75% women, 25% men. Why is that? Because pride and ego gets in the way of a guy asking for help or seeking mentorship. I promise you, working with a mentor will help you accelerate your career opportunities. And because it is okay not to know everything, and it's okay to continue to develop yourself. Now, again, going to that conference, that webinar, or that classroom is perfectly fine. But you have to come to the realization that, again, 95% of the stuff you learn is forgotten by Monday morning, and you don't do anything with it. So just because you attended the class, you got credit for it, doesn't mean you're smarter, wiser, or better than before you went there. So I think that is really critically important. So it is self-development, working with a coach and mentor, learning on the job, the next level opportunities, and that exposure plus networking will set you up for success.
Oh, thank you. That was a really good response. In today's world, there's a lot of uncertainty with things changing so fast. So how do leaders build trust and engagement of the team when we live in such volatile times?
Yeah, so trust is the one what we call non-negotiable, right? So in high performance is trust multiplied times engagement. So if you are not trusted, I don't care how much you engage with your team, they will not perform at a high level. Of course, if you're trusting, you don't engage them, you can be high performance. So these are two things you have to do. Trust is non-negotiable. So in my program, I teach people the 4 key responsibilities of leaders. And number 1 speaks to trust more than any other 3, but all 4 of them are relevant. Love the people that you lead. As a leader or aspiring leader, you have to get to know the people that you lead on a more personal level. You have to learn what makes them tick, what are their intrinsic values. You have to show them in a 3-to-1 ratio, positive energy versus tough love. And if you do that effectively, so we tend to reward and recognize people on occasion, but not often enough, right? So we have to be as soft as possible and as firm as we need to be, and we have to recognize with abundance. And that cannot underestimate. So part of the attributes of a highly effective leader is to be empathetic, is to be outward thinking rather than inward thinking. So making part of your daily routine to go out on the gamma, see where the work is done so you never forget that. Not from a disciplinary standpoint, but go out and just make conversations. Make time to get to know the people on a deeper personal level. So that is important. The engagement part comes in is that as a leader, you cannot be the doer of everything. You have to include the people into the program itself. So in nursing, and I work with a bunch of nursing leaders, is that we have now a shared governance model, meaning that everybody has a voice in how we're going to design policy procedure for their particular units. It's their magnet status, right? It's actually a nationwide organization that's driving safety and quality through shared governance. And that's really the simple basic principle. As a leader, you want to be able to help identify what is expected of you, what's that North Star, Then you need to recruit people of your team, both the people who are early adopters and high performers, including some people who are the doubters, onto a team and let them come up with a solution while you facilitate the process itself. And that is very difficult to do for highly, for alpha, leaders who think that they know the answer, because they will go into those teams and they will tell them what they need to do, rather than allowing that team to go through a robust discussion to come up with the best possible solution to test it out. Because the difference is this: if I do it to them, the resistance to change is very high because trust is very low. But if I allow them, I set the stage and I tell them what the outcome should look like, and I give them the freedom to create and innovate, and they are the ones who are driving it. It lowers the resistance to change, it increases trust, and you have engagement of the entire team. It is much easier for them to tell their colleagues that this is working than for me. They will believe them while they won't believe me, per se. And that's really the magic of leadership, is to find that fine balance of building trust, love the people that you lead, leading through context and not control, creating that safe environment where people do work in, and to make sure that you provide them with laser focus.
So before you mentioned like the importance, like teams should be functioning at, high performance. How can leaders quickly assess and know if the team is like functioning at their peak performance?
So it's actually a funny, I'll start with a little story because it's very significant. So it's 6 months into the new year, right? If I go ask leaders today how well their teams are performing, they will tell you that 75% of their teams are meeting or exceeding expectations for the year. Now, in reality, that's not true. In reality, only 25% of the teams are meeting or exceeding expectations. And you say, how come? Remember that every leader has somebody they report to, and they don't want to look bad in front of their leaders. So what they do is they lower expectation of the teams to the point that they're either performing or maybe even exceeding that point, and that's what they report back. So we need to stop lying to ourselves and to start becoming brutally honest about the performance of the teams itself. And to take, again, this is behavioral capacity. They need to have the behavioral capacity as leaders to recognize where things are not going well and seek help. And too often they rely on them doing it rather than going to the outside, in the process improvement committee, or come to a business mentor like myself to say, hey, I need some help. I can promise you this: those who do perform at a much higher level, and they will accelerate their careers. Those who don't often are held back, or create, a falsity that once they, what is that called? The Peter syndrome, I think it is. They will run into a point that they can no longer perform at a higher level. And to prevent that is they should have asked for help. They should have retained a coach and mentor. They should have continued to develop themselves and learn how to measure performance in an honest way, in order to be able to take the right corrective measures to get their teams to perform at a higher level.
Before the show, you mentioned to me you fly airplanes and helicopters, which I think is really impressive. How does like aviation help shape your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, you have to think about it this way. I'm a flight instructor, instrument-rated helicopter pilot, and I also have my fixed wing, working on my teaching certificates right now. What holds true in both of them is that you are a leader of self when you're in that aircraft. And we don't do things just on assumptions. We do things through repetition and checklists. And interesting enough, a scorecard is a checklist, right? There are processes that you need to learn and really become good at just in case. No different as a paramedic. I had to learn how to do CPR and how to intubate, how to start IVs, how to give medication, how to defibrillate. Well, in an airplane or a helicopter, I have to learn what to do in case the engine stops. Right? So down, right, aft. These, they're just automatically programmed. If something happens down, right, aft, assume the right attitude, speed, and figure out the length. All these things become part of your checklist items. So aviation and crew resource management, which I've learned as a flight paramedic working with a medevac, is critically important.
So what is your vision for like the Dutch mentorship program or movement within the next 5 years? Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 years?
So I would love to continue to build it out. So I think I have a solid foundation, and it was very important for me to build credibility with with individuals and with clients. This is a referral-based business, right? People will tell other people of what they have done, what they have experienced. I think I have that now set on my website at thedutchmentor.com, where people can read, a couple hundred articles. They can listen to other mentees who have gone through the program. I have other business leaders. They can attest to the outcomes that we have accomplished. So I would love in the next year or two to really go beyond myself and a few other coaches and be able to have a larger impact. So right now it's really focused around individuals and helping out organizations like HLY, Healthcare Leaders of New York, ACHE New Jersey. Now it is to grow, right? It said, how can I go to one mentor, two mentor, three mentor? So I've had a bunch of people go to the program and they have now the experience to become mentors as well. So the goal is, of course, is that I, as one person, want to be able to impact hundreds who can impact thousands. Well, if there's more than one, I have now 3 people who are capable of this. We can expand that beyond myself and having greater and greater impact on the people that we lead.
Walter, if somebody had a question about a conversation today or they're interested in working with you, what are the best ways they can reach out to you?
2 ways. Go to my LinkedIn profile and just, connect there, or go to my website at thedutchmentor.com. Book a free consultation. Let's have a conversation. Again, I don't consider myself a salesperson. I'll answer any of the questions. If you feel that this is something that makes sense, then working together makes sense. And that is really, we have an opportunity to chat and I'll be happy to explain the processes and see how we can best collaborate for a better future.
So do you have any final words for our audience before we wrap up our podcast for today?
Sure. The last component of the operational rhythm says take action. So let our conversation not be a conversation of the classroom, the webinar, the conference, or a podcast, where it is really enjoyable to listen to this and you sit there shaking your head. Yes, you need to take action in order to start improving on all fronts. So make that appointment today. So go to your boss and ask for an individual development plan. Take an action every single day, 15 minutes a day, to create new habits and behaviors. So again, it is action and consistent action that is measured, that gives you the outcomes that you deserve and want.
Well, Walter, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I was very impressed with your answers and the way you speak. You're obviously very knowledgeable and talented, and you bring a lot to the table. You definitely don't blow smoke when it comes to understanding leadership and how to do it appropriately. You speak of truth and authenticity, which I think is rare these days. So I want to thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and expertise with our audience today.
Thank you, Daniel. Much success with your podcast. You're doing a great service to the community by bringing people on board and having these open communications. Look forward to connecting again.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.